old for video games.
You have failed.
The same way, I will destroy you. And my friend is truly dead.
Now this is pod racing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Graying Jedi podcast. I am UrzaMaster. Joining me as always, Lord Uther and Jedi Master Psyllium Maas. We convene on this occasion, the 15th of such occasions, the Graying Jedi Council, to talk once again Andor, or should we call it Mon Mothma at this point? I'll leave that up to the audience. Drop us a comment below. But today we're talking about Nobody's Listening, the 9th episode in the series. And I have to say, this one's a nice little nail biter. I'm excited to hear what background brought this episode about. I think it did a lot of interesting things for Star Wars and a lot of interesting things for the series. I won't steal any more of Jedi Master Psyllium Maas' thunder. Psyllium Maas, take us away.
Thank you, Jedi Master UrzaMaster. Thank you, Jedi Master Lord Uther. And thanks to all of you Padawans and Sith watching and listening and enjoying the Graying Jedi on Pending Rebrand and YouTube and wherever you find fantastic podcasts. Yes, nobody's listening, although we very much hope that's not the case for this episode. First aired on November 2nd, 2022. And like last week, we are back in our groove of one director, one writer. Toby Haynes directs, and Beau Willimon of House of Cards fame is our scribe. This actually picks up right where the previous episode left off. So it's not a two-parter, but it's a seamless transition in which Dedra and Dr. Gorst are getting ready to interrogate our young, helpless Bix Colleen. And this is a moment, the entire episode really, is Denise Guff's to lose. She never raises her voice. It's almost viper-like. It's almost like she's hissing her dialogue, but she's not doing so in such a way that feels overly theatrical or mustache twirling or the like. I mean, she keeps it at a low decibel, but this woman is evil. And we finally see the ugliness beneath the veneer and the mask. Up until this point, we kind of regarded her, yes, as an ISB agent and someone trying to rise through the ranks and someone who was ruthlessly professional and a little cold-hearted. But you had a grudging respect for a woman trying to make it in a man's world. Not so much here. Now we see Dedra for what she truly is, and she's a predator. And she has some absolutely great one-liners when she's trying to soften up Bix before the torture. Talking about fishermen casting their nets, and are you a fish, Bix, or a thief? And when Bix proves to be non-receptive to her invitations to have a conversation, she tells her the very worst thing you can do right now is bore me. But she does it like in barely a whisper, and it just, ugh. So naturally Bix wants to put on a brave face, and that's where we have Dr. Gorst, our resident Nazi, talk about the banality of evil. He cheerfully tells Bix exactly what they're going to do to her. They've recorded a species' death cries. In fact, possibly even some of their children's death cries. And they're going to make her listen to them until her mind snaps like a breadstick. Now, originally, as part of the backstory of this episode, the sound designers wanted to actually create the sounds that Bix hears and allow us, the audience, to listen in with her. And it was showrunner, head writer Tony Gilroy who vetoed that and said, let the audience, anything the audience imagines will be more terrifying than anything we dream up. and let the actress Adria Arjona, let her tell us how to feel. And it's absolutely, like I say, bone chilling to see her. Basically, again, her mind just goes. And they do a nice episode 4 callback. You can imagine when Princess Leia was being threatened by the Imperial interrogation droid, the chamber to her cell snaps closed. An Imperial officer strides down the corridor. It was an indelible moment for anyone who saw New Hope, especially at a young age, because again, we didn't see Leia getting injected with the needle and what happened after that, but our imaginations filled in the gaps, and they actually echo that scene almost precisely with a fast closing hatch and an Imperial striding off there. So when you're starting an episode like that, it's, again, we don't have any blasters. There's no escape, like there's no heroic rescue. And we quickly see that Bix is overmatched and that Dedra will do literally anything to get what she wants. Which makes her even all the more interesting later in the episode, where she has a run-in with Cyril. Now, when we first run into Cyril in this episode, he and his mom are going back and forth. It kind of feels like he's got the upper hand in this. He brags about a promotion that she didn't know about. He slurps his cereal loudly to drown out her criticisms, microaggressions. And you kind of feel like, all right, Cyril's again coming into his own. He's going to stand on his own 2 feet. He's growing a spine. But then he runs into Dedra outside ISB headquarters, and he comes across as kind of not kind of a stalker, a full-on stalker. And even though he's talking about a sense of duty and professionalism, in his words, in between each syllable, you see that he's, powerfully attracted to what Dedra represents: power, authority, etc., etc. Whether it's a physical attraction is highly irrelevant. And what's great about Kyle Soler, who plays Cyril, and Denise Guff playing Dedra, she's repulsed by him. Like, she wants absolutely nothing to do with him, even though technically they're on the same side. They want the same thing, the capture of Andor and the dissolution of the Rebel Alliance. So they're technically allies. But to hear him, he literally almost sounds deranged as he's going on about how he feels safe with her, and for the first time in his life, now he has purpose, and et cetera, et cetera. And she's just like, if you ever come near me again, your history. And it's just, it's a fascinating thing, because again, we're getting new layers of the onion for Dedra, and we're getting Cyril suddenly in a whole new context, from when we just saw him a couple of scenes prior, where he was seemingly confident, and again, the audience. So the great thing about this show, again, and the different writing teams that they're using, Bo Williman getting credit for this one. Just when you think your expectations are set, like a compass needle pointing north, they completely pull the rug out from you and make you reassess almost everything you've just said. And we've done that with Andor. Andor started off as a selfish, I'm out for me and I'll get mine and the rest of you can, to somebody who is now being forced to be a team player, who is having his eyes open to the wider conflict and inequity in the galaxy, as he's a victim of it. And you see in this episode, he's had a few shifts under his belt now. He's very competent in the factory. I mean, these guys are now a slick, well-oiled machine. You're the greatest NASCAR pit crew you've ever seen, putting together these widgets, which we still don't know what they're used for, and whether or not, like I say, it's the equivalent of the Empire saying, dig a ditch, now fill it up. Now go dig a ditch over here, now fill it up. We have no idea if it's just busy work. But we'll get into Narkina 5 here shortly. The final thing I want to say about Dedra, and then throw it over to you guys there, is this is not a show that you can be sitting there and you're cleaning the dishes and the dog is barking and the baby's hungry and you're trying to pay attention to what's going on while all of this chaos surrounds you. You have to dial in. You have to drill down, because there are a lot of things that are just said in dialogue that otherwise would go over one's head. And the case in point, they make a big deal how they've captured a rebel pilot. This is sort of the final bits that we have of Dedra in this episode. And the rebel pilot, if we've been paying attention in prior episodes, he is connected to Anton Krieger. And you'll recall that Anton Krieger was the rebel, the separatist, that Luthen approached Saw Gerrera about helping out and to attack a power station, an Imperial power station at Spellhouse. And Saw said, absolutely not, he's a separatist, I won't work for that guy. Well, now we know that the Empire has found a way in, has cut into that cell, and I mean, can lay a trap basically for anybody who tries to attack the power grid there at with Anton Krieger. Now again, we've never seen Anton Krieger. We don't, you know, he's only a name being used in dialogue between other characters. But, and slight spoiler alert for those of you who have not yet seen the show, this is something to pay attention to. And I love the attention to detail that Andor gives us, where entire plot developments are going to be based on conversations. So again, this is not a time to be checking the TikTok and so forth. You've got to really give it 52 minutes of your free time and energy, and you will be rewarded, as we have already there. So, gentlemen, where we stand here is our two villains, our two principal villains, let's call them that, Dedra and Cyril. And, you know, particularly with Jedi Master, UrzaMaster experiencing this for the first time, Lord Uther having time to rewatch and reassemble his thoughts. Again, do your initial impressions now stand naked? Did you factor this in all along as you were, you know, appreciating or rooting against these characters? Like, how did you feel? I think this is a big pivot episode for both of them in their interactions face to face and separately. And I throw it out to the council.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very on brand for Cyril. You know, he's a corporate kiss-ass when we first meet him, frankly, and this often goes hand in hand, is he's sort of a cuckold and, you know, obsessed with power and obsessed with, you know, this vision he has in his head, this sort of fanatical devotion to something he doesn't quite understand, which is apparent he doesn't understand, as you see him, you know, very early on Ferrix being shocked by the realities of everything he's facing. And then on top of that, you know, you see the opposite of that same fanaticism or radicalization to a cause that's not a freedom fight but a dominance. And you see that in kind of its most vicious, successful form. So you're kind of getting both sides of the coin there, where you have the sort of self-defeating fanaticism and the absolute power thirst. I think it kind of speaks to the absolute evil and the shades of gray of evil. You know, you get Cyril, who, you know, maybe is held back partially in his cause by this greater sense of justice, whereas Dedra she has no concept of justice. This is duty, this is procedure, this is machination. She's full on empire. You know, the actions therein are simply, you know, it's fielding a purpose for the empire. You know, her own personal power grab aside, it's really not personal. It's duty, and it's sort of a cold, machine-like joy she takes in it, which is very Vader. You know, more machine than man. She's very unfeeling. Although I think there's some hints of feeling in her. Like there's still some vestiges of humanity. There's some slight moments, glances, changes of the expression on her face, which hint at the fact that she may have real feelings and not just, she's not just some cold icon of the Empire. Kind of like Cyril is all feelings, but is deeply, deeply misguided, but also at his core a villain. And you have some sympathy, but you also realize he's a creep, and part of his evil is being a creep, but also it's product of nurture, so you kind of feel bad for him in a way. And we get the foil of that too with Mon Mothma and Val, where you get the sort of
good reveal.
What's the word I'm searching for? The big reveal that they're related, and that Mon Mothma is kind of the holier than thou, privileged sense of justice, sense of good in the universe, but really is she willing to do what it takes to actually achieve that? And then you've got Val, who's very much on the front lines, understanding of the trenches, willing to do the dirty work, making the commitment, actually out there
Putting her neck
trying
on
to
the line.
achieve these things.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting dichotomy, and it's showing you the shades of black and white that the Force doesn't show you. When we're talking Force stories, you get Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, and the various Sith he fights, and then of course Anakin, Obi-Wan. You don't get these rich, diverse, good and evil. There's a lot of gray in this series. It's very apropos that it appears in the Graying Jedi.
Indeed.
Right, Deidre is everything that Cyril wants to be. So when he's approaching her and speaking to her, it's like he's begging almost for her to like take him on in a sense, so he can experience what he's always wanted, which we can obviously link that back to Mom, because Mom, I love the line, "You've been going through my secret storage, or my secret tote, or whatever it is," and it's the goofiest thing, it's the creepiest thing, which is right up there with him creeping about trying to talk to Deidre.
I think Mom says it's called cleaning, which I thought was a nice rejoinder. I think she's like, it's called cleaning.
Right, yeah. Which is something like a mom like that would say, right? When really she's just snooping into his business. So from that perspective, it's not jealousy that I think he has. Again, it's maybe it's like a deep admiration. It's a deep longing or wanting to be what she is. Like that was, to me, that was his goal, right? Was to be in a position like that. I also think that idea that she's kind of fighting those, you can see her fighting the humanity and kind of going cold like that. I think that's the actress, and I don't know her name off the top of my head. What is it again?
Denise Gough plays Dedra.
Yeah, Dedra. She such an excellent job of conveying those emotions. Again, like you said, so similar to Vader, right? Always fighting the good side, and here she is not wanting to give into that because of that sense of duty. Which makes you wonder, what is she really looking out for? Is she, what's her end game in a sense? Is it she wants to move up the ladder? Is it really a sense of justice? I think that's what gets kind of twisted here, and maybe that's what's a little different, where if she was a rebel in terms of what would her end game be or her goal be, here we just see her, going along, throwing her weight around, trying to impress the higher ups as well. That's her hope. So I found all that very interesting, along with the Vel Mon Mothma. Obviously, I like when Mon Mothma says, "Now go act like a spoiled rich girl. That's what you need to go do now. You got to throw them off your trail. So go do that.
which is
As
exactly
she's
what
trying to,
Uther
if she's going to wind up.
accused her of, like as a lover, like she's like, oh, poor little rich girl fighting for the cause or something. And Val was like, that's cold even for you. Like, it's kind of like a thing she can't shake. This reputation.
Yeah.
So
And now Mon Mothma is like, you have to do that so it gets people off of your trail. That's extremely important.
I also really like the line, did you find yourself a husband out there? Because obviously she's a lesbian.
Right, yeah.
That was one of those details I was like, oh. And then the glance between her and Mon Mothma at that moment, I'm like, oh.
And just the cold relationship that her and her husband have, it's probably, it's like that old Klingon proverb, it's a dish best served cold. And so here we are with this.
Right. I mean,
Go ahead.
make a list of Mon Mothma. I mean, we see her at the office in the Senate. She's being heckled, ignored. They're turning off their pods. Like,
Yeah.
like she's talking about, uplift and trying to protect people from the Emperor's new demands, and they're just like, long live the Empire. You can hear the hecklers up in the cheap seat from the Outer Rim.
I gotta tell you, I almost want to see Palpatine. I'm sorry, I never, like, that might sound kind of fanboyish, but they've been doing such a great job of not inserting him in anywhere, even a glance or a like something from him that
I am the Senate.
yeah, like I kind of want to see that, but that cold relationship between Mon Mothma and her husband, at some point in our lives, we've probably had something like a relationship like that where it's just gone sour and cold. But here's one that, and we've walked away from them, right? Or they would never walk away from us because we're the Graying Jedi. Just like everyone would not walk away from this podcast, and they're going to click subscribe below. But like, she can't leave this relationship because it's part of her cover. And so she's got to suffer through that for the cause. The cause is that important that she's willing to suffer through.
And her daughter's a little, what, too. I mean,
yes,
it's the husband and the daughter.
Yes,
so we have Mon Mothma, who's not having any fun at the office, squabbling with Luthen over how far is too far to take this. Her husband and her daughter basically can't stand her and don't try to really hide that when they're just even having like a nice breakfast, allegedly. And then she's talking with Tay, and she can't keep moving money around because the Imperials are going to find it. And his proposal is, well, you basically have to get into business with a real scoundrel, like from the homeworld, which she's absolutely dead set against. But the alternative is being discovered and possibly, ending up on Narkina 6. So I'm just...
And I like that idea, too, of sometimes the idea sounds great until you really get involved in it. And then you're like, wait a second. Yes, the cause. But, man, is this really a good idea? Like, I got a bad feeling about this. I mean, should I really be doing this? And that's the one thing that I think we're seeing a lot from Mon is I think she goes back and forth on that sometimes. I think she's there for the cause, but I think sometimes she's like, man, what did I get myself into? I mean, I'm in deep. And sometimes you don't realize it until it's upon you and you can't do anything about it. And she's doing such a great job of acting and of portraying, her words are there, don't get me wrong, but just her facial expressions, how she carries herself, doing such a great job of portraying that, should I have gone this far? And I think that's a great question. I'm sure that has happened so many times in history where someone has said to themselves, have I taken this too far? Do I really know what I got myself into? And there's no going back now. There's no going back.
This woman is not the rebel leader we see first in Return of the Jedi, or even Rogue One. This is not the calm, resolute, determined leader. I mean, like I said, she's not even really a very good senator. She tells Tay that everyone thinks she's an irritation, or like she's basically a backbencher, you know, from the British Parliament vernacular. Like again, nobody's listening. They're tuning her out, even though she's trying to call attention to problems in the galaxy. And to take basically a figurehead character, the heroic Mon Mothma, who led the rebels' final assault and defeated the Empire once and for all, you know, in the Age of Rebellion. I mean, it's very much a one-note, one-dimensional character, as written, as conceived, as the story needed to be told. But to see Genevieve O'Reilly just give us this sort of, you know, woman being torn in so many emotional directions and so forth. I mean, Jedi Master, UrzaMaster jokes, you know, we can rename the show Mothma. You're not too far off when you think about the emotional stakes. And I'll let him sound off on that. I know he's a fan of Miss O'Reilly.
Well, and we talk about foils in the show, as I think often sci-fi does, is they tell sort of mirror stories in the same breath, and it's Mon Mothma and Andor. I think that's your foil. You know, you're looking at the scum and villainy that rises to be the rebel paragon, and you've got the senator, I guess you could say maybe, I'm trying to think of the expression, but it's failing me right now, but the sort of senator in absentia, who's, you know, there but affecting nothing, and then rises to be, you know, somebody of true prominence that actually delivers, when I think most, shall we say, politicians tend to be sort of hollow figureheads, which is the funny kind of design of the Senate chamber is all these big hollow pods that float around that really don't do anything. They're just sort of there as a platform, and nothing really happens with them. Except when Yoda throws them around. So, you know, it's interesting to see their journeys. Exactly, and they're just like, they're showing us two different emotional struggles. One between the individual who wants to represent themselves, and the other between the individual who desperately wants to represent all, but has to also do for self, when they really would, on principle, probably do that last, but by force they just have to do what they have to do as well. And they're both struggling with doing the things they have to do to achieve their goals, whether it's sheer survival, as we have in Andor's case, or whether it's protecting themselves so they can actually accomplish their goals of helping others in Mon Mothma's case. I think, frankly, it's two of the more exciting Star Wars stories ever told. You're getting two heroes' journeys that couldn't be more distinct and separate, but they're almost mirror images. And although we know in Rogue One, you know, Cassian Andor meets his untimely end, and Mon Mothma, as far as we know, is still kicking. And I think that easily you could have predicted it going the opposite way. So that it just makes a very layered, nuanced story that, you know, I think is one of the more unique things about this show, and the way they wrote it is unique, and the way it's acted is unique, and it has to be, because this is not your typical method of storytelling, and it's not your typical story to tell. It's very true to life.
And real quick, because, you know, I enjoyed the final three movies so much, actually the final two, 8 and 9, which actually make me nauseous just saying 8 and 9. Was Mon Mothma in those?
So
was she in?
Well, okay.
I can't remember.
In the
I hate to
canon,
say it.
in the canon that has not been put in front of pages yet, you will remember possibly a name drop in Ahsoka, I believe, but she is the Chancellor now after the demise of Palpatine.
That's right.
So she's the Chancellor. I don't know if her ultimate fate has been revealed, and I don't believe she was on the Hosnian Prime planet that was destroyed in the Force Awakens by the Starkiller base. I don't believe she was on that planet. So whatever happened to her, because Force Awakens is, again, about 20, 25 years after Return of the Jedi.
Right.
I mean, I believe there's probably still some tale to tell as to what eventually becomes of Mon, but I don't believe by the time we reach the sequel trilogy that she's in power anymore. Basically, I mean, at that point, you just have the Resistance and the First Order, up for grabs, kind of a thing there. So they were deliberately vague in how that whole thing worked out. So there's room for Dave Filoni to come in and stitch it all together. But we would be remiss in analyzing, dissecting, and enjoying a show called Andor if we didn't talk about Cassian Andor, who, as we mentioned, is getting very good at his menial labor and is constantly needling his supervisor, Kino Loy, played by the redoubtable Andy Serkis, as to exactly how they're going to get out of here. He doesn't want to hear anything about it. He is in complete denial. He's just merely focused on how many shifts he has before he's a free man. Meanwhile, Andor is sawing away at pipes in the lavatory. Gave me a very Shawshank moment, just kind of like, it's a very small, I mean, what's one pipe going to do in a facility that elaborate and so forth? But you get the sense that they're trying to do something. And he even tells another inmate, we're going to change a plan. Like they've been obviously coordinating and trying to work this out. It also led me to think, again, we are in a science fiction story. We're not doing HBO's Oz or, again, some gritty behind bars kind of expose. But in most prisons, in the Shawshank Redemption, for example, the beloved Stephen King adaptation, you have cliques and you have prisoners who don't like each other and are eyeing each other warily in the exercise yard and things like that. But it's a testament to how bad the Empire is that we basically don't see that kind of infighting. Like we don't have the Aryan Brotherhood and other, factions squabbling or knifing each other when they're back in their little...
No First Order here.
Right. I mean, so it's funny how basically, and again, in last week's episode of The Graying Jedi, go ahead and make sure you've subscribed and checked it out. We talked about how some of these guys are probably behind bars for really heinous crimes. They're not all just innocent bystanders swept up for imperial labor, although we also posited that could very well be the case. But here, even if there are scoundrels, villains, scum of the galaxy, they have a common foe, which is the Empire and its brutality and its authoritarianism and its fascist leanings. And so they basically all kind of work together, right? I mean, they're not at each other's throats like, hey, man, move faster or I'll cut you. So I think that's interesting that this basically it's a prison of basically nice guys who are being horribly oppressed and exploited by the Empire there. But Andor is needling Kino, talking to him about escape, and he's like, you just best turn your mind off of that. He actually turns his back to him, turns off his light, and doesn't want anything to do with it. And Cassian points out, look, what is the episode called? Like, they're not eavesdropping on us. There are no microphones in here. They don't care what we say to each other. We're just here to work the widgets. And if one of us goes down, then later that afternoon, they bring another one in or another 30 in. We are cheaper than droids and easier to replace. And I mean, that's, that line struck a chord for me. First of all, I thought droids would be cheap labor, but apparently servicing them and keeping them running is probably difficult. But I mean, basically, what is the Empire doing in this prison? But they're just killing off A New Hope, or any hope, or anything of, they have your sentence, the number of days, right there, so it's always looking at you when you're not on this factory floor. They don't seem to give you any sense that there's a better life, rehabilitation, anything outside of this. And we learned that, quite frankly, that was the whole plan all along. That is a feature, not a bug, because on level 2, an inmate was released, or he was actually released from a different level, level 4. And instead of being paroled, sent back to be a productive citizen of the galaxy, they just stuck him back down on level 2 with a brand new sentence. And level 2 found out and rebelled, and they all got fried instantly. The entire level, at least 100 men, maybe more. But what does the Empire care? By that, evening or next day, they'll have 100 more prisoners they've rounded up for everything from interstellar jaywalking to spice running, and that galvanizes finally. You see the panic. Andy Serkis does a tremendous job of when he's trying to tamp down. These are rumors, and he wants to stay on program, and he just wants everything to be organized and neat and just simple, because he can see the finish line and he knows he can cross the finish line, he'll have his freedom, and then to basically be told, well, no, that's not going to happen. They'll either double your sentence like they did to every inmate shortly after Al-Hani, or they'll just send you, if they don't send you down to level 2 and screw up, they'll send you to one of those other 4 places that prisoners were being herded to after sentencing. The shore troopers were looking like, what's your name? All right, Narkina 5. What's your name? Okay, you're over it. So they'll just keep moving you from system to system. You're never getting free. And I mean, maybe that's a bit heavy on the metaphor and so forth like that. But this might be the thing that finally snaps Andor's mind, saying, under Imperial control, we are all prisoners, and they have no intention of honoring, sentences or the judicial process or, human rights, or we are just meat to them, and we are cheaper than droids and easier to replace. So I wanted to throw out a little bit of nihilistic impressions there. And then I wanted you to, I saved it for you, to comment on your feelings on the final moments of this episode. So I throw it out to the council.
I loved the nihilist angle. I really did. It's the tipping point that I think even the most hesitant, most self-interested good guy, there's that line that they'll never really truly cross, and that's realizing that there is quote unquote no hope. When you're really truly backed into a corner, that's when your true colors come out. You'll either capitulate and wither, or you'll stand up, and you may, what's the famous line from Shrek? Some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. He's got to basically put up or shut up at this point. And I think, like you said, Andy Serkis does just an unbelievably good job. And it's really tragic, because like the whole time that this older gentleman is on this pod, he's going to have some medical issue come up. He looks like hell from the jump. And a stroke makes perfect sense. You see his hands continuously shaking. He can't keep himself up. He's basically dying of natural causes. It's like there's no point in saving him. Everybody's going to die. Everybody's trapped here forever until they die. You may as well just let it go. And it's that moment that both Cassian and Kino are confronted with now. And it's like, all right, what do we rise up to do? And if we rise up, how do we rise up together? How do we make something of this? And fortunately, unfortunately, they start to have kind of the knowledge it may take to get them out of here. Now, obviously, I think we know Andor gets out of here, based on Rogue One, of course. But it's amazing the emotion that plays out in that just couple minute sequence on Andy Serkis's face, because this guy doesn't really mean anything to him, or at least he's convinced himself. But they've been incarcerated together a long time, and he's like, oh, come on, just pull it through. You're so close. I'm so close. We're about to get out of here. We're about to have our lives back. And that horrible realization that's probably always been there at the back of his mind, like, I'm never getting out of here. There's nothing left. It's that's the tipping point, for even the most practiced and organized mind. that's where things break. And the same goes for Bix. Again, this is a mirror of what Bix is going through. Her literal torture, you know, they broke her mind. And, you know, sometimes the break can fracture you as a person, and sometimes it can galvanize you into a hero. It's kind of the true test of will and test of merit. And sometimes the path out isn't clear. So it's a very nuanced method of storytelling. It relies heavily on the actors here, and the casting is just perfect for this, because they could not have picked two more capable actors to make this happen. Just in speaking of this sequence with Cassian and Kino Loy, not to mention the fact that you have Val and Mon Mothma and Luthen, and like all of these actors are just, you can tell they have a probably a good background in stage work, because they're emoting in so many ways that, you know, somebody who maybe isn't traditionally trained in acting and has only done small screen or big screen work probably can't pull off. You know, that's a level of complexity that probably wouldn't work, and that's maybe where Hayden Christensen failed.
Or the writing. Anyway. Sorry, I can't help myself. Remember which I'm sure all of our fans remember what I said last episode, that Andor's always thinking. He's always plotting. He's observant. He's very perceptive of everything. And we see that, I mean, yeah, he's trying to cut away at the pipe in the bathroom, but then he walks out and he's talking to that one guy, and he's like, see, I told you there's, you know, he doesn't have boots on and blah, blah, blah. Like, he's been talking to more than just Andy Serkis's character. He's obviously, you know, if he's talking to that other guy, he's probably been talking to other people too, planting some of those seeds about, you know, how can we get out of here? And, you know, to kind of see that starting to come together, and then we see what happens with Olaf, which it's funny because I think everyone becomes endured to that character. We feel for him, and these guys are looking out for him. Again, to your point there, Psyllium Maas, you know, they're not trying to shank each other. They're always looking out for each other, because more than likely, you know, the idea that all of them against the greater evil probably makes more sense than going after each other. But, you know, looking out for him, and then it's funny because sometimes, and we've had these conversations before about who would you cast for this role or that role, or, you know, did they pick the right person for this? Today I was trying to think if there was anyone else I would have put into Andy Serkis's role, and there's not. Like, and especially, and not really a spoiler, but something's going to wind up happening that you're going to be like, it can only have been him. There's no one else that could have pulled this off. It's going to be that good. And he was just, there's no one else, I think, that could have played that role but him. And just such an awesome moment when they're walking away from Olaf's body, and Andor's poking him again, right? Just one more time. How many guards on each level? And then, you know, Serkis goes, never more than 12. And you can see it too, right? Like, to UrzaMaster's point, he's done. Like, he's going to jump in on this, and probably, obviously, a pivotal person that you need involved with it. If he is the floor manager, you've got to have this guy on board, probably in one way or another, because, again, like we kind of talked about last episode, which everyone remembers this, he's kind of in that capo role where, you know, he's not really obviously loyal to the Empire, but he probably knows which side that, you know, his bread is buttered on, in a sense, and so he's playing out that role to the best of his ability just because he wants to get out so bad. But as soon as that slight glimmer of hope is taken away, you can tell he's all in with Andor. Like, that's it. It's on.
And what Andy Serkis does here for the first 2 episodes, because don't forget, we feel like we've been with this character the whole show. He's only been in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, the brevity and the economy of storytelling here, but yet the richness of the character that we now feel like we know. He actually told an online publication he believed he was like a firebrand shop steward before the Empire, and he was interested in labor relations and so forth. And Narkina 5 just crushed that in him. But what he does is, I mean, the first, right up until the moment that Lord Uther just mentioned, when he says, never more than 12, like he's not a villain, but he's just I don't I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it.
He's walking the line.
Right. I mean, he's just and as a result, the audience, he's kind of pushing the audience away because we want him to be on board, but and he's not like ruthless with Cassian and all the others. He barks. His bark is probably more than his bite, but
right.
You want the light bulb to go off as a viewer, as an audience member, and so he communicates that transition in a way that we believe it. It's not just some arbitrary snap of the finger, oh, now suddenly I want to get out of here. Like I said, as Olaf lays dying, as he realizes that something has happened, and he can't just tell them, hey, knock it off, quit signaling them, just don't worry about it. You have no idea how many, that's 5 floors below us. There's just, like I say, he conveys it all just in his face and just in the acting in terms of, things are outside of my control. And like you say, I don't want to dream up another actor who would have pulled it off, because he pulls it off just, he literally captures that moment. My final question to you guys on the council this week, to my fellow masters, forget affiliations. Forget whether you would side with the rebellion or the Empire or the Separatists or the Republic. Forget all that. In this show specifically, who would you want to go into battle with, be it Imperial or Rebel? Who would you literally want at your side, got your back, got your 6? Who is the one character that so far you say, like, I need this person watching my back? I'll go first. Skeen.
That's a really good
Skeen would be
question.
my guy from the Aldani heist. I want a guy duplicitous enough to know all the angles. So I absolutely would choose Skeen. But boy, I'd watch him close.
Do you have some winners, Master?
I'm going to probably go with Val.
Okay.
I think she's far more capable than she comes across, and her hesitancy definitely makes me feel like she's going to see it through. And I think Aldani solidified that, although I don't, even in her moment of pause, I didn't doubt her. And that's, I think, rare in a character. I mean, I think the obvious answer is Andor, and I think that's the answer you should come away with from this show. But if we're being real, I think I have more trust in Val.
I mean, at this point, I can't say Andor because I think he's been not wishy-washy, but hasn't always been committed to the cause. Again, if we're saying we don't have to, it could be either cause. I'm going to probably go with Deirdre.
Nice.
Because, I mean, she is loyal to, and not like I want to back the Imperials, but if we're just talking about someone that is going to get the job done, is going to follow through, will have a do whatever it takes kind of attitude. As of right now, I'm probably going to go. I'm going to have to go that route. And this episode has convinced me of that. That's the person I would probably want by my side.
I mean, if we're talking historical, it's going to be Mon Mothma. And I'm a huge Mon Mothma fan for, like, a million other reasons, but...
I mean, so that would be your 1B, it sounds like. My 1B would be Luthen. Because that dude's ruthless, and it's another, he would do whatever it takes to make sure that the mission gets completed. And he'll sacrifice whoever he needs to sacrifice for the cause. I still kind of question, even at this point, is Andor really looking to get out of the prison because he wants to help the cause, or does he want to get out of prison because he doesn't want to be in prison? I think those are two different things. I really do.
Yeah.
And so that's why my 1B would probably be Luthen on that. And Deidre and Luthen, I mean, they're cut from the same cloth. They're just on different sides. You could probably switch them out, and you wouldn't really know the difference. I mean, that's how similar they are.
But who wins in a fight, Deirdre or Luthen? I guess celebrity death match.
Luthen.
Okay,
Yeah, Luthen. He's gonna have something up his sleeve. That's why.
got it.
Whatever it takes, he's gonna have something that's gonna
He'll fight dirty.
give him the edge.
Okay.
Deidre's too much by. Well, yeah, he would. Deidre wouldn't. I think she's too much by the book.
Got it.
Luthen, he's that dude. Like, is he packing? Like, I don't know. And he probably would be. Let's rate this bad boy.
I agree. I think it's time to give this our lightsaber ratings du jour. 15 episodes in, fellas. We've had a lot of super solid ratings. We've not had a red lightsaber to date. I have a feeling we're probably not going to get one today. But I'd be interested to know, and I think this should be a contest, which Star Wars of anything iteration is going to earn that first red lightsaber from us. Is it going to be episode 8?
Oh. Let's save
Spoiler
that
alert.
because
No.
We'll have to see what happens. But as far as this entry of Andor, Master Psyllium Maas, what lightsaber do you bestow upon this episode?
Well, in a surprise to actually no one who enjoys the Graying Jedi on YouTube and Spotify and pending rebrand, make sure you hit subscribe. We're going with a classic 2-in-1 this week. Pert green.
you don't need that anymore.
So, and
Sorry.
pert is a great adjective, and it also does wonders on your follicles. So, we're going with pert green this week for the show. Again, if you think about it, if you want to be a jerk, it's a lot of people talking, right? And what really happens. But it's the character and the world building and the emotions that it provokes that really stand out. And if you've been following Andor carefully, you know that when they reach the 3rd episode of their mini arcs, then all hell breaks loose. Luthen and Andor have to escape Ferrex, and the Aldhani heist goes down and goes sideways. So again, this is a non-spoiler alert. We've done 2 Narkina 5s, and next week is episode 3. So you can imagine that probably stuff's going to happen. But the beauty of the show is that you don't have to have jailbreaks, sting operations, blasters, stormtroopers, TIE fighters, the works. This was just human beings struggling to maintain their humanity or crush their humanity, depending on which side they were on, in equal measure. And that's just, I'm sorry, that's peak television. It's great television. It's right up there with any non-science fiction show out there right now. And a couple that we've talked about before, including ones on 5-year missions and exploring strange new worlds. So green lightsaber, you know me, you love me, and that's where we're going here.
I'm gonna go Kevin McHale green, the best post player ever in the NBA. And let me take it one step further. I'm gonna go Kevin McHale against Karl Malone
Nice.
green,
The mailman.
because Karl Malone is the Josh Giddey of the 80s and 90s NBA basketball. So to counter that type of evil, you can only go to one Kevin McHale
The low post.
in the post.
Yeah, there we go.
Very nice.
All day long.
Very nice. Favorite Karl Malone moment was when he told me that he is not afraid of ghosts because they're spooky, but they don't bite. Call back to The Man Show. Anybody watch that in the late 90s? Just be Karl
why I
Malone
just-
here.
Yeah, that's right.
Reminding you not to be afraid of ghosts. They spooky, but they don't bite. Classic
Oh,
moment.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Guessing Jimmy Kimmel regrets that sketch a little bit for a
Oh,
few reasons.
maybe it's only been all over Twitter or X lately, but yes, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, that we don't need to get
No.
into that.
Never will.
I'm going to give this episode a apple juice label green
Nice.
lightsaber.
Nice.
I don't have much green around me, which is odd. Brett Favre green maybe.
No, apple juice.
Or all those
It's a delicious
hundreds
flavor.
in your wallet, you know.
It'll.
Yes, this is very good apple juice. No, I really enjoyed this episode. I felt it was the raising of a fever pitch. That if this were a movie in these 3 episodes, this would be the really exciting part that gets you pumped up for the climax that's to follow. And I want to just watch the next episode right now. That's the best part about this. And like I was very tempted to issue this a Ray Blue. But I have to be honest, it's too exciting to limit to such a low lightsaber rating because there's so much joy that comes from, frankly, Andy Serkis, Mon Mothma, and Val in this episode. Andor, really, to his end, is functional. It's a vessel, and he still does a great job. So I'm blown away. I like it. I can't wait to see what happens next. I think this is the magic that all weekly episodic streaming shows are aiming for, and I hope that it continues through the next couple episodes.
No worries.
Oh, yes. So as we journey forth to this galaxy far, far away again, in our next episode of the Warp Core podcast, episode 16, we hope you'll come along with us. We've heard your thoughts out there on YouTube. We have a few followers who have been diligently following along, giving us their thoughts. I enjoy reading them. I'm sure my compadres here in the council enjoy reading them. We want to hear more of your thoughts. So do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a like. Make sure you're giving us your full thoughts and comments on everything we've said. Maybe you're sick of all the Mon Mothma thumbnails, but I have to feel like that can't possibly be the case.
It might change next episode. You never
It
know.
might change. You might get something more exciting. But we look forward to our next foray into the Force and into the world of Andor with our next episode. Until then, may the Force be with you.
And also with you.